In this lecture, we'll start looking at the Baroque era, which comes after, obviously, Mannerism, the late Renaissance. And so, a couple of things that are going on in Europe at the time. By now, we've had the Reformation, the big ones being, Martin Luther, creating the Lutheran Church, breaking away from the Roman Catholic Church, as well as Henry VIII also breaking away from the Roman Catholic Church. So this is when Europe gets divided up into Protestant and Catholicism. Sort of each kind of vying for power. The Catholic Church uses Baroque art as counter-reformation. We'll get to that in just a bit. Some of the other things that took place during the Northern Renaissance was the beginning of the widespread use of oil paint. Oil paint starting in the Northern Renaissance. Jan van Eyck is given credit for that. And the result is, these, vivid, bright colors that you can get from the oil paint, as well as, many other being able to, render the your image much better, so more believable 3D object on a flat surface, stuff we've talked about before. So with Baroque art, one of the ways I like to explain Baroque art is, much like if you've seen the dramatic stage play, and there's the moment of the play where everyone's kind of huddled together and there's like that single spotlight shining down on the cast of characters, and all you can really see are just sort of that little group of people. So looking at Caravaggio's Entombment of Christ, that's basically what you get. We look at some of the Northern Renaissance. They kind of have light, airy backgrounds and stuff, whereas the Italians have, almost no background. They're almost just this veil of black behind it. So it's very theatrical type of imagery, very dramatic, very emotional. They're really trying to get this emotional response from you. Part of the Baroque art, very just dramatic and very theatrical type imagery. And so Bernini's Saint Teresa in Ecstasy in the Coronado Chapel. So on the left we have the whole chapel, and on the right we have the sculpture itself. So one of the things Bernini went with on this is, using a rock pedestal as opposed to a marble pedestal or something like that. Basically continuing on with the whole idea of more natural feeling type of setting. So it's, very easy recognizable type setting. And so what Bernini is doing, the Saint Teresa, when Teresa had her calling, you could say, this vision that she has, this angel of the Lord comes down and plunges an arrow or a spear, depending on which version you read. It kind of varies, but here we have this angel basically kind of holding this arrow, ready to plunge it into Teresa's heart. And part of what she talks about during this moment was, obviously it's gonna hurt. Getting stabbed in the heart by an arrow that's not going to feel good. But then she talks about, the pain starts to subside, and she's just full of this love and this warmth. God has come to her and showing His love, and that's what she's was talking about. So Bernini's trying to recreate that moment of the angel standing before Teresa holding the arrow, and Teresa is this the look on her face. So again, it's trying to be very sort of theatrical and animated, not just this still stiff chunk of marble. So, but Bernini's trying to even show the emotions of Teresa at the time, and sort of the idea of the strong light that you'd normally have in the painting. That's a little more in the background with sort of the gold gilded rods that are behind there, showing that light that's coming down. And then Borromini's San Carlo alla Quattro Fontaine in Rome. So looking at Baroque architecture, and again, it's kind of playing with light a little. They're playing a little more with the natural light as the sun's moving across the sky, being able to sort of create kind of this dramatic entrance by taking use of the sun. And as you can see on the left, it's not just a flat facade. The front of this building is not just flat like kind of the front of the building you see next to it, but it has these concaved areas and these convex, so it's like sort of wavy, the little niches in there for the statues, again playing with the natural light. So the architect's also thinking about, playing with light and making something a little more dramatic, whereas, shortly before, during the Renaissance, most likely that front of the building would just be, just flat. There wouldn't be much to it. So the architects, trying to add a little more to their designs, trying to make them different. And Artemisia Gentileschi, one of the few female painters who gets a lot of recognition during this time. Basically, she was a follower of Caravaggio, and heavily influenced by his work and the drama and everything that he creates. So here we have her painting Judith and the maidservant with the head of Holofernes. And kind of, one of the fun things about Gentileschi's paintings, the Caravaggio, were the lights coming from somewhere off the canvas. Gentileschi was a little more playful and would include the light source on the canvas. So in this case, being that single candle there, as Judith and her maidservant are trying to make it through the palace. So, long story short, Judith was kind of described as sort of a princess of Israel, and then when they were conquered by Holofernes, he basically, said, I could use a bride, so she decided she would take one for the team, marry him, and part of the deal was that the Jewish population could remain true to their faith, and they wouldn't have to take on the pagan faiths of Holofernes. So Holofernes was okay with that for a little bit, but then he goes against his words. Starts murdering the nobles and enslaving many other people. So uh, Judith decides to again take one for the team and you know cuts his head off. So that's why they have the head of Holofernes. They just decapitated him. So uh, fellas, don't you get married, don't enslave your wife's family and kill them. That could be bad. This is what could end up. So the moral of the story, just I don't know, buying pizza or something like that if you need their help. So going up north to Belgium to Rubens. So the raising of the cross. Again, it's pretty dramatic. That strong sense of light. But like I was saying, the background a little more kind of light and airy. At least that's how I would describe it. You actually see a background, whereas like the Gentileschi and the Caravaggio, there's almost no background whatsoever. But there's still all the drama and the passion and the theatrical aspects of it. So we still have that and the strong sense of light shining down on the cast of characters. And once again, Rubens kind of failed at historical accuracy, as there's a Roman soldier there kind of dressed in modern uh, armor, but we talked about that before, where they're wanting to sort of create this image that there's something familiar to the viewer. It wasn't this far off distant place, but something that is a little closer to home. So one way of doing that would be the clothing. The other that we talked about was the architecture. So probably the background here, kind of the side of the cliff and the trees and bushes and all that. Probably would be something similar in appearance. What they would have in Belgium. So, and then moving on to the Palace of Versailles, built for King Louis XIV, the Sun King. And part of this whole thing was his take on absolutism, as in he is the monarch, he is the absolute ruler of France. There's nothing above him. Only God is above him, and God has given him the authority to rule any and all things in France. So one of the way he asserts his power is building essentially the palace, or it's almost like a small town, really. If you want to look it up on Google Maps, it is just a massive, massive place. It's like over 1,000 rooms and several buildings. Basically, Louis XIV made the entire court. So, all of his his version of cabinet members, the foreign dignitaries, ambassadors, all the people that would be at court, they all had to move to Versailles. So, showing off the decadence, basically what he's doing here. And in Versailles, we have the Hall of Mirrors, where one side we have these massive, massive windows, floor-to-ceiling windows. Opposite that, these floor-to-ceiling mirrors, although mirror making was pretty difficult, so they're actually kind of smaller mirrors, but there's a whole lot of them together to make up like one gigantic mirror, basically, is what they're doing. And then, you know, the gilded candlesticks and the chandeliers, you know, really just like throwing light all around inside this. And then with the mirrors, I mean, just having like one mirror was, you know, it cost you, you know, a pretty penny to just get one mirror. But just this idea that you have this whole hallway lined with floor to ceiling mirrors, just, you know, mind-boggling. Again, it's like just showing his power and his wealth that he has. And then up along the ceilings, the paintings up along the ceiling, you know, they would have been, you know, pretty similar to the Rubens. You know, there would be all the dramatic feel to them, just, you know, not as dark and heavy like the Italians. So now turning to Spain with Diego Velázquez and Los Meninas, or the Maid of Honor. And so basically what we have is this scene of King Philip and his wife having a royal portrait painted. So we have Diego Velázquez there, his fancy little outfit. We'll get to that in a minute. Painting before this gigantic canvas, off to, I guess technically, his left side, our right side. Sort of dead middle in the canvas is the Maid of Honor, the daughter of King Philip. So she's, you know, very well lit, basically. You know, the point of this is, you know, her, the Maid of Honor. She's the, you know, last living heir of King Philip. And of course, then there's the different servants and attendants around them. And even the guy exiting in the background. And if you notice, you know, just to the left of the door where the guy's exiting, there, you know, this mirror is there. And so that's the question then becomes, you know, what's being reflected there? Is that a reflection of what Diego is painting, or is it a reflection of sort of you, the viewer, that you're given the sort of active role in this painting? Because you have, you know, Diego, the daughter, and, you know, some of the servants, they're all engaging you. They're looking at you. So it goes beyond just the sort of painting, but it's a little more interactive. You know, you're being engaged by this painting. At the same time, the scale of the painting is, you know, Diego there would be about life size, so, you know, pretty massive. And then one of the interesting things about Diego is that he's painted himself in the outfit of like one of the honor guards. So it's like only a select few people were allowed to wear this uniform that he has. You know, it's like the king's inner circle. And so Velázquez, you know, being a court painter, he felt that he should be portrayed as someone, you know, within the inner circle of the king. And so moving up to the Netherlands with Rembrandt, his painting The Night Watch. So you have Captain Ben and Cook's Company of Civic Guards. So by this time, you know, the Netherlands is a full republic. They no longer have a monarchy ruling them. So this is kind of a, you know, an interesting take as far as the patron, the person paying for the painting, is this group of people. It's not one single commission like most paintings are. In this case, it's this group of people. So basically, this painting would hang in like the city hall. So here we have, Captain Cook's people getting together, and they're going to go out on their nightly patrol, kind of like they're going to, being the police at the time. So what an easy way to put it. So it's always been called the Night Watch, and kind of an interesting thing. A while back, they started to do restoration and clean the painting off, clean all the dirt and grime. And now they're starting to wonder if it's really a nighttime scene after all. That there's just that much filth on the canvas that it appears to be nighttime. So, jury is still out if that ever changes. The idea that it's called the Night Watch and becomes the Day Watch, because for hundreds of years, several decades, it's been called the Night Watch. So, jury's still out on that. And so Judith Leuchter, the carousing couple. Long story short, for this one, avoid alcohol. Here we have this couple here. Got their little rosy cheeks. The guy's, playing his violin there. I'm not expert at playing the violin, but I've known a few people, and I've never seen anyone quite play that way. But then again, I guess the lady here serving him the drinks, and she kind of looks suspicious, like she's up to something. Both got pretty rosy cheeks, so they're having a good time. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with couple having a good time? Well, what if they are not married? I never said they were married together. They're sitting together. So who knows? They totally different relationships with other people. So the Protestant church at the time, they would use Baroque art as sort of their PSAs, and this was to speak of the dangers of alcohol. Consuming alcohol can lead to bad situations. You could find yourself in a bad situation that you don't want to be in. So it's just best if you avoid alcohol altogether. So that would be sort of the moral lesson behind this painting. So next up, we'll start looking at Rococo art, and art that started because a guy fell into a well.